Welcome to Consulting from the Couch, where we explore the people, ideas, and leadership shaping our communities and our lives, one story at a time. In today's episode, we're taking a closer look at what it means to lead in a small, rural community, the kind of place where everybody knows your name and they may even know your phone number. I've had the privilege of working with today's guest to better his town, community, and county for many years. Schumata Brown is a town manager of Maysville, North Carolina, a rural community facing both the blessings and the burdens of small town life. From balancing infrastructure needs with limited resources to preserving the town's identity while planning for its future, Schumata has had to lead with creativity, resilience, and heart. We'll talk about what keeps him up at night, what inspires him to keep going, and what leadership looks like when you're building trust across kitchen tables and not boardrooms. Welcome, Schumata, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
If you would take a couple minutes and just tell listeners about Schumata Brown.
Born and raised in Maysville, North Carolina, real town guy, very humble. Had the privilege of not moving away, right? Had the opportunity, could have joined the military and moved away or went off to college, but I chose to stay in the small town and lead, coach, and do all those things. Again, born and raised from Maysville.
So native Jones County high school product, Jones County school system product.
Correct.
Go Trojans,
Public
right?
schools, right?
That's right, public schools. Let's hop right in because I've got some really great questions for you, man. Just getting to talk about your role, and I know you'll appreciate this question. In a small rural town, the town manager, as well as many other employees, often wears many hats. What does a typical day look like for you, if there is one?
Steve, there's no typical day, right, in a small town. One moment, over reviewing the budget, the next, I might be out looking what public works is doing on the streets. True story, 2 weeks ago, I was in a hole putting in taps. So I'm likely to get a budget question from the grocery store as I'm in the boardroom. So it's no typical day, wear many hats. And again, like I said, it was a true story. They put me on Facebook. I was putting in taps just 2 weeks ago.
So basically it's doing what you got to do to get it done.
Correct.
That's awesome. So what makes leading in a rural community uniquely rewarding and or challenging?
Well, I think it's the relationships. You're leading people that are not strangers. These people that I worship with, that I grew up with. Heck, my mom and dad stays there. So to me, it's all about the relationships. And my decisions, I tell people, for me, it's not personal. They're professional. So every decision, I feel it, and it's got to be made because, again, I'm going to see those folks at church. I'm going to see those families at family functions. So I can't hide behind the policy, right?
There's that accountability factor.
Correct. Transparency.
Transparency, that's right. So you've been county manager now for how long?
Town manager, 9 years.
Yeah, I'm sorry, town manager for 9 years. So talk about evolution and evolving and obviously change. Have you faced some resistance to change? And as a leader, how have you approached that?
Yes, absolutely. Change is uncomfortable, right? Everybody don't like change, and I had to make sure that they'll feel comfortable, with that change. Living in a small rural budget was tight, right? So I got to earn some trust, and trust ain't earned fast; it's slowly. So I approach first by listening, right, and truly listening to the people that is involved early in the process. I learned that if people have a value or a voice in it, it has the ability to make that change a little bit easier.
You made two really good points there. You talk about listening. My background as a communicator, everyone just kind of jumps to the assumption that being a good communicator is being able to articulate, speak, or be able to take, in my case for many years, taking complex things like engineering and stuff like that and maybe boiling them down to everyday, language. And that is definitely an integral part of communications, but something that I think you would agree with, communications is also listening and doing that first, right?
I think it's a big part, and that's why I said I listen and I truly listen. We have a ability to articulate real well. I mean, I might not be able to do that, but one thing I can do is listen well, and I think I learned a long time, and that's actually listening to folks.
That's right.
And not over talking them.
Yeah. And the other thing you mentioned that I think is paramount is trust. You talk about building trust. Trust isn't earned, trust isn't given. I think you would agree with this. It's so hard to earn someone's trust, but it's so easy, or it can happen really quickly, losing someone's trust. You may work for years upon years upon years to build a relationship and to create that trust. And in one instance, and you mentioned transparency, right? That's the key. So I think that's great. So let's talk about infrastructure, because I know we've worked together on infrastructure projects in the past, and talk about limited funding and aging infrastructure, or just infrastructure that needs to be upgraded. How do you prioritize in the town of Maysville what gets done?
First, we're going to start with safety, right?
Absolutely.
And I want to be clear, and then equality, not equality, equity. You know what I mean? And I want to make sure we're safety and equity for the people. I look what's going to affect the people the most, right? And then we go what's critical to the town infrastructure and what's critical to the function. And then we leverage what? Grants and partnerships, right?
Yeah. So one thing, in 35 years in working in the business that I worked in, it's all about relationships. It's all about leveraging partnerships.
Correct.
And it's all about figuring out creative ways to solve a problem, right?
Correct.
And that kind of leads to my next question. Does anything come to mind right offhand about a creative way that you secured funding or solved a problem? And I've got in on my question here, infrastructure, but it doesn't have to be necessarily an infrastructure problem that you solved. It could be any problem that potentially has come up,
right?
With the town of Maysville.
Right. And, we can't do everything at once, right? We got to plan, be disciplined, and communicate early in the process. One creative funding that comes to mind is we recently combined state funds with town funds and some appropriation from our state legislative on a street paving project. We just paved about 95% of our streets. That hasn't been done probably since the implementation of the paving in town. So we got rid of all the potholes and all of that in town with being creative with partnerships. And also recently in the news, we were just did a ribbon cutting on the Workforce Development Center, where we took a old part of history of town and preserve that history and using it for something.
Yeah, I saw that. Talk about that project a little bit. I had eliminated a question that I was going to talk about a shrinking workforce and and stuff like that. Talk a little bit about that project, because I think that's just a really interesting project.
Yeah, like you said, the youth migration and small town losing population. I think that project, we're creating reasons for what young people to stay, right? We're like job training opportunities, support, and improving public spaces. Our workforce is an example of that. We took that partnerships. Again, we can't do everything alone because we just don't have the capacity. With LCC and Golden Leaf with a grant to fund that train depot to create a workforce development center where it's going to give young people opportunities to train for plumbing jobs, electrical, HVAC, water and sewer jobs, which is critical to, I think, the nation. I think I just read a blog that millionaires in, I think, the 70s was all guys. Then the tech guys came in the 90s. And they said the next wave of millionaires will be these workforce development jobs.
You're exactly right, because obviously I'm a little bit older than you, but a little bit. But growing up, man, it was like it gets kind of beat in your head. Hey, if you want to get a good paying job, get your undergraduate degree, right?
Correct.
Then after that, when you started getting the influx of folks getting their undergraduate degrees, it was like, hey, you want to get a good job, you need to go get your master's and or your PhD. And over the years, folks have been indoctrinated into that concept. Not saying it's a bad concept at all, because those things are needed. I did it. My kids did it, but at some point in time, when you start doing that, you have no one going into the trades.
Correct.
And that's why a plumber can make $100+ an hour. That's why an HVAC guy or a good mechanic or electrician or whatever can make really good money because of the supply and demand. So to get a plumber, and I'll just say Mark Burnett, I'm going to give him a plug. He's my plumber.
Correct.
To get Leonard Honeycutt, he's my electrician. I'm very fortunate, but to get someone like that to come to your house for a one-off job is hard.
It's hard. I tell people all the time, we deal in the water and sewer business. People have leaks all the time. I tell folks, I can make $1 million out of a plumber just in Maysville.
Just fixing leaks.
And you talked about all those, being in doctor, going to college and getting these office jobs or whatever, and I'm not ashamed to say, I'm scared to go up under my house. You know what I mean?
Dude,
so I want to hire somebody to go up under there.
Okay, so I'm scared to go under my house. I probably can't fit underneath my house, but I'm much like you, man. So you talked about workforce development. You talked about that awesome creative partnership with Lenoir Community College, Golden Leaf, Town of Maysville. Talk about small business and talk about things that you're doing, because you've done some really neat things the last couple of years to support small business in your community.
Correct. We listen to what they need, right? Whether it's marketing, grant access, or infrastructure, and we try to remove those barriers. We provided, along with the partnership from the county, some microloans for small businesses, and I actually did the legwork, for those small. You need a grant, I'll write it. You don't have to do anything, but tell me what you need. So that support, making permitting process simplified, right? You want to come and start a business.
A lot of cities and towns need to listen to what you're doing, because getting a permit for something can be very difficult.
Right. And I noticed that, and that could be a barrier. In small towns like Maysville, we can't be extreme. It's just Jacksonville or New Bern. So we try to simplify that. We want to be, our tagline is naturally welcoming, right? So we want to welcome everybody, whether it's a business or whatever. So we try to remove those barriers.
So is your that little area that you were creating, I was fortunate enough to serve with you on the Community 100 for Jones County, and this idea popped up. I'm not ashamed to say I actually made the motion to help with this project because I just thought it was a wonderful idea. Talk about that.
And again, another partnership, and you made that motion. I can remember John Bennett, economic developer, coming out and saying that he'd never seen something approved so fast.
Yep.
And that Maysville Marketplace was an idea that we had an empty lot that was being overgrown, and we took that and put out 6 10 by 12 sheds for entrepreneurs to come in and have a space that is relatively cheap to start their business. And that marketplace have grown. We have added another shed, which is a hair salon. We have 2 season rentals as we speak. My lady is actually doing coffee and tea now, and that is pleased with her business. We have a T-shirt kind of gift maker in one, and one lady is doing produce. We even had a guy that come in, and I didn't think it would do good, and he did the same thing, but he's selling feed, dog food, and that business has grown. He was one of the first ones, wasn't he? Correct.
Yeah.
And he just growing out the seams. He has added another shed out there. We're looking in the budget this year to add additional sheds. So it's doing what it's intended to do, and they're able to come there. They can come in there and rent it for a season for like $600 a year. You know what I mean? And $25 a weekend. You talk about entrepreneurship and helping the people.
Startup entrepreneurship, right. Innovative, creative thinking outside the box, with the seasonal traffic, with the beach coming right down 17 to head down 58. Is that 58 to head down Highway 50?
Correct.
To head down Highway 58, be on your right, not far from the town hall and everything, and it's just something just unique. So kudos for that, man. That was a great idea, man. That was an awesome idea. Well, unfortunately, it can't always be balloons and sunshine, right? Tell me as a leader and tell me as town manager, there are tough conversations, whether it's budget related, it's something going on, and as town manager, you're going to talk to citizens when, even beyond budget, when something's going on in the community. Talk to me about how you handle those tough conversations and or criticism.
First with humility, and honesty, right? Criticism come with the job. I know that. And you're pretty sure, you've been criticized some things, but it does come with the job. And I try to be with humility and honesty. Number one, I don't take it personal, right? We get criticized, whether it's through an EVAB or anything, we kind of take it personal. And I try not to take it personal. And I try to create a space, for dialogue. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about your goes back to listening, right? Right. And again, you know what? With criticism, and I teach my kids all the time, right? With our shortfalls, let's take responsibility for it, right? let's acknowledge that I had a shortfall, and I think that goes a long way. It was like, all right, we got it wrong. Okay, let's talk about it and let's fix it.
And we always say this, and I don't think you're putting lipstick on it, but people always talk about a problem or a situation or whatever, but it's an opportunity.
Yeah. Let's talk about the why behind the bad choice, right?
That's
and again,
you
go back to trust, and it's built one conversation at a time.
That's exactly right. So rural leaders leading in a rural community, what's one leadership skill that is especially important when you're leading in your setting? And I think you may have already hit on it, but in case you haven't, I'll give you this opportunity, or you can, talk about that.
Well, I think it's adaptability. I mean, okay. we're constantly changing, and you might have a different word for it that you was thinking, but I think that we got to adapt, whether it's a storm, whether it's a business that's needing or a budget shortfall. We have to adapt, with every opportunity. I mean, we can't be rigid.
Schumata, I think being in a small community, some would say that that's a weakness or whatever because of things, but I think your weakness is also your greatest strength. Because being adaptable and being able to move, large towns, large cities, large communities, they don't necessarily always possess that adaptability. Personal experience, worked for the local electric cooperative for 30 plus odd years. Our leadership, our governance with our board of directors was local. So we were able to maybe make decisions, do things a little bit quicker than the investor-owned utility, Duke Energy or
Correct,
Carolina Power and Light or the city of New Bern or whatever. It didn't have to go up some sort of really structured corporate ladder or whatever. So by us being small, local, grounded in the community, that smallness was actually to our benefit. And I would say probably the town of Maysville is the same way.
That's right.
Yeah. So you may leave somebody out here. Talk to me about unsung heroes in your town and tell me how you, as a leader, you lift them up and you support them.
Yeah. Again, you could leave somebody out, and we always talk about fire and police, right?
Yeah.
They are the heroes,
they're
right?
They're the superstars.
Right.
They get all the recognition. Right. Yeah, absolutely. And much deserved, by the way.
Right. But, let's think about our public works. People are, it's a beautiful thing to go there and turn your faucet on and flush your toilet. It's a beautiful thing, right?
Until it doesn't happen, and
right.
Much like electricity.
Right. And we can argue, we could do without the police or we could do without, always those cons, but go there and not be able to turn on your water and flush your toilet. There's a problem every day. So, in our admin staff, you talk about them and they don't get much recognition, and the volunteers, right?
Yep.
Who keep the events going. So those are some unsung heroes that hardly ever get in the headlines.
And how do you support them?
I try to celebrate them publicly, right? We try to do that. Try to give public works better tools, right? We support, admin, whatever, if it's a new computer, if it's, a new pen, or if it's office paper, you try to support them every day and make sure that they're valued. And leadership means shining light on others and not standing in it. You know what I mean? So I don't want to stand in light. I want to shine a light on the public works, admin staff, the volunteers, the police, the fire. So,
and I think you would agree with this. You're only as good as the employees at work. So I always use this phrase, working. I may have had 20 people that work, quote, I guess, for me or underneath me or whatever. Right. I always said when I was talking about somebody might say, hey, who's that? And I'd say, oh, that's Joe. He works with me. He might report to me, but he works with me. But at the same time, I always understood if an employee understands their role and their purpose and understand what their part of the greater good, then they're appreciated. They understand their job, and they'll, employees will do almost anything if you show them that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And sort of like with Jones Law, y'all got a lot of trucks, a lot of equipment, right? Maysville got sewer plant, water plant, trucks, computers, all that. But our biggest asset are those folks that clock out at 5 o'clock every day. 100%
agree with you, man. So let's talk long term. 20 years from now, I will be 77, and let's hope I'll be standing upright. Long term, what do you hope people say about Schumata Brown and the leadership he has brought and will hopefully continue to bring to the town of Maysville and the community and Jones County?
Okay, so first I want people to understand, there's a quote that said we're creating shade for others to sit under. whatever I'm doing now is not for me to sit up under that shade tree. It's for others. I want Maysville to be known for a place that honor its history, right? While creating a future for everybody, right? Where families feel safe, businesses can thrive, and young people want to stay there, right? 20 years from now, I hope they say that I led with one, integrity, right? We want to always have that integrity, that I brought people together, try to have community engagement as much as I could, and lay the groundwork for growth that didn't leave anyone behind, whether it was age, race, or whatever. It didn't leave anyone behind.
That's awesome. You pretty much answered the last question. What does success look like for you, not just professionally, but for the community as a whole? I think your answer there just really tackled both of them. So I prepped you with those questions. You knew what I was going to ask you there.
Correct.
Now I've got a couple. I really think that great leaders in our community, there's certain things that they do. There's certain traits that they have, whether it's certain this or certain that. And so each podcast, I'm gonna talk to the guest about the various questions that I'm asked as related to that topic that day. But then at the end, I'm going to ask every guest these same questions. And over time, I'm just going to kind of see how this shakes out. I'm just going to kind of do a little informal poll and just say, hey, yeah, so 80% of the guests said this, or some sort of maybe a term or some sort of theme or something like that. So they're not difficult questions. They're just, it's kind of honestly getting to know a little more about Schumata Brown. So with that said, when you think of the word successful, who's the first person who comes to mind and why?
I want to say Jesus Christ, just because of my religious background, and I was raised in the church and always putting God first.
And I think you really don't have to answer why from that. I think everybody pretty much knows that as why. Don't know if you're a moviegoer or a book reader. What is your favorite documentary or movie or potential book of all time?
It probably, and again,
that's a tough one.
It is a tough one, but I'm going to go back. Again, I don't want to harper, and I'm not trying to change anybody, but the greatest book ever wrote to me is the Bible.
The Bible, absolutely.
Correct. I'd take a lot of that and put into my life. You don't even have to be a religion just to learn from, that Bible.
And a lot of, however you, and this isn't a religious show, but regardless of how you feel, but just reading it as a historical document, and a lot of the lessons learned and with the parables and just a lot of things associated with that, there are just a lot of great stories that teach you about being a good person and doing the right thing.
And I just think that's what it just means about being a good person and doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
But I am reading a book now that's called Shifting the Monkey. It's pretty intriguing to me, because I'm a leader that I like to get hands on and do a lot, but it tells you that, to keep those good people and to separate the bad employees, kind of shift those jobs and making sure that they're doing that.
Shifting the monkey. All right. Excellent. Let's talk about morning rituals. What does the first 60 minutes of every day look like for Schumata Brown?
I think it's looked like what my life is looking, and care for others. My wife was diagnosed with ALS, so my first 60 minutes is taking care of her. And that's what's been in my life for a lot, is taking care of others.
Taking care of others. Yeah. True servant leader, man. So this one's a tough one. If you had to speak about something, if you were asked to speak about something and to give a TED Talk about something outside of your main area of expertise, you couldn't talk about being the town manager of the town of Maysville, what would be a topic that you would talk about outside your area of expertise?
I'm a big baseball fan.
Are you?
Yes. Big sports advocate. So I'm pretty sure it would be on baseball.
You could, somebody says, hey, Schumata, get there and talk 15 minutes about something, and you would just get there and talk about baseball.
Right. I think baseball is starting to be a lost sport in our community.
I would concur.
I'm a big advocate of trying to bring that back to the community. So I think I would get up there and talk baseball.
Awesome. You mentioned something earlier, and I don't know if this is the same one. Do you have a quote you live your life by or you think of often?
Too much is given, much is required.
Absolutely. Last one. You may have something for this. You may not have something for this. I just thought this was an intriguing question. What do you believe is true? What do you believe is true, even though you can't prove it?
Do I believe it's true? that the earth is round.
That's right. Okay. So you are not a, who was that Duke basketball player?
Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie Irving. Right. You are not a Kyrie. You don't fall down in the sphere of Kyrie Irving that the earth is flat.
Correct.
I would say that I concur with you on that assessment. So listen, that's a wrap. Schumata, thank you so much. And listen, that's this episode of Consulting from the Couch. Big thanks to you, man, for sharing what it really takes to lead in a small town and the wins, the challenges, and the heart that it takes, behind it all. And to the listeners, thank you for listening. If you like this episode of Consulting from the Couch, be sure to follow us by going to blcconsultingllc.com. I had to add the LLC in there because somebody had BLC Consulting. So blcconsultingllc.com. Leave a quick review or share it with someone who loves hearing just local stories about local leaders and what they're doing. Until next time, I'm Steve Goodson, and talk soon.